Hi, Trinity. This week I would like to talk about worship. We were in our elder meeting last week and we were all saying how much we miss singing together and that we need to figure out how to exactly to proceed with this. But even as we can't sing together on Sunday morning, we were saying, how do we equip our congregation to worship? And one of my hopes is that every one of us spends some time in worship every day, wherever we are. So this week we're going to look at scripture passages that help us do exactly that, to worship God in various ways, in various places, even as we're at such a strange time as a church in terms of corporate worship. One of the first passages that came to mind as I was thinking about this is John 4. Bob Burns had recommended to the rest of us elders a sermon from John 4 last week, and I watched it, and this passage has been on my mind since. That sermon was especially about the cultural reconciliation that's taking place in John 4, that Jesus walks right into the middle of this racial conflict and focuses both sides on God. But part of what comes up in this, and part of what makes me think about worship, is this middle paragraph of John 4. Jesus is talking with this Samaritan woman, and she wants to ask about worship. Where should we worship in particular? John 4:19 says, the woman said to Jesus, "Sir, I perceive that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things." And Jesus said to her, "I who speak to you am he." What strikes me in this passage is that she asks a question about where they need to worship. And Jesus does not answer the where question, with a where answer. She says, "Where should we worship? Here on this mountain, in Jerusalem." And he doesn't say this mountain. He doesn't say Jerusalem. He doesn't say halfway in between. He doesn't say, for the purposes, of our church, at 18652 116th Avenue Southeast. Jesus does not answer the worship question with a where answer. Instead, he says we need to worship in spirit and truth. The true worshipers, he says, will worship the Father in spirit and truth, and the Father is seeking such people to worship him. And so I think that's a good way for us to start this week of thinking about worship biblically, to remember that though we would like to be worshiping corporately here at the church, and though we hope to be as soon as possible, in the meantime, the Father is seeking worshipers who will worship him in spirit and truth wherever they happen to be. Wherever you are sitting or standing or walking or driving now is a place where there should be a worshiper worshiping God in spirit and in truth. And so I encourage you to be that worshiper right now, in fact. Our hope is that all of us would spend time in worship each day wherever we are. And that time could be right now where you happen to be. So I encourage you, let us worship the Father in spirit and in truth.